These are about the highest note that I can hear on the piano. But something that I like to do is feel the vibrations. Now, I can't feel the vibrations for the higher notes. But when I go down to the lower note, I can really feel the vibrations coming through the piano there.
Mojo Mathers is New Zealand's first deaf MP. As a working mum, she doesn't get to spend much time at home in Christchurch with her family. On her one free day, Mojo loves to visit the local farmers market. Perfect place for a Green MP.
It's a good feeling that the community is in control of its own food. Could we have this bundle of fruit, please? The quality of the fruit and vegetables is better, it's cheaper, and you get an opportunity to talk directly to the people who grow and produce this stuff. It's about building relationships and empowering the local community. Because I come here regularly, most of them know that they need to face me and so on. I do find I miss things, and often decisions with me say, hey, that guy just asked you how you are.
So how you been keeping?
Do you want to wash on the floor? No.
Yep, it's all right. Cheers. Now
So,
this, you've been a good girl?
Oh, well, been a busy one.
Yeah?
Very
Get
busy.
that Prime Minister on his toe.
Travelling all over the place.
Mojo's lived in Christchurch since she was 18.
Hot chocolate for you when you get home.
Family plays a very important role in her life, and her mum Mary is a key member of her support team. When Mojo lost her home in the September quake, she took refuge at her mum's.
It's been really quite a challenge getting the balance right between being a mum and being in Parliament. I miss my kids. I miss them a lot. So what I try and do is make the kids my top priority in the weekend.
I really miss her. Like, sometimes it feels like she's changed, but she's still the same mum, but she's so busy and enthusiastic about her work, and it's really good to see her so out there and stuff, but I do miss her at home.
Growing up with a deaf mum has its benefits.
Sometimes in public, if I'm just gonna say something, or like I love you or something, I'll just mouth it, and it's really good. It's sort of like our secret communication. Most of my green thinking I've got from you, but where did you get your values, and how did you start thinking green?
I think I've been thinking green all my life. I was brought up on a farm when I was little, and I got these values from my mum.
Well, yes, we were part of the Back to the Land movement because we were environmentalists. We wanted to be self-sufficient. That was quite a popular thing in the 1970s.
We spent about 5 years of my childhood on a farm in South Wales, and that time there had a profound impact on me because I found that time quite magical. We had a lot of animals. We had only 5 acres of land, but we were trying to do the self-sufficient lifestyle thing, and so we had chooks, we had pigs, we had goats for milk, we had a few sheep, a big vegetable garden that was very productive. I've got 3 children, and my eldest daughter is at Otago University, and she's studying law, and I'm kind of missing her right now. I started really at Parliament at the same time that Bethany started in Otago. I think that the impacts have been harder on the family because of that, because Megan feels like she lost both her mum and her sister at the same time.
One of the things we have really great in this family is, like, we are sort of equal to, like, our parents. So I don't know, you've always just sort of made us feel like what we have to say matters.
Yeah,
and that sort of meant that we can...
Like,
we can tell you anything.
Yeah, it's not like whatever you say goes. We can actually argue our point.
Yeah.
Sometimes. You are very up at arguing your point with me. I grant you that, yes. Yeah. As a child, I was confident with my family, but I was not confident socially. I suffered all the usual experiences of being bullied, of isolation, of not feeling like I belonged anywhere. And I think that is compounded when you have a hearing loss, because you really don't know what's going on around you.
Mojo is deaf due to a lack of oxygen during her difficult birth.
It wasn't picked up that I was deaf until I was about 2.5, and it was my kindergarten that teachers that picked up, and they said to my mother, "Do you realise that your daughter is deaf?" My mother was informed to face me when she was speaking so that I could learn to read her lips and to always make sure that she had my attention before saying anything. At the same time as teaching me to speak, she taught me to read so that I would pick up the grammatical structure of language, because otherwise you don't hear all the little in-between words. So I learned to read before I even went to school, which was a huge benefit for me. Among my earliest memories is of reading Tintin books. I read them over and over and over again. The experiences we have as a child influence us for life. Here my DVD collection. I've got my romantic ones here, and then over here I've got my science fiction, Lord of the Rings, Doctor Who. I was a huge Doctor Who fan as a child, and I have to watch it every week. But one of the things I discovered recently was that the theme tune I wasn't hearing properly. So as a child, all I heard was this sort of ooh sound, and it wasn't until with my new digital aid that I was able to actually hear that there was a tune as well. But, you know, I only ever got half of the story. And then DVDs arrived, and there were subtitles, or a lot of them are. And secondly, I found that I had this sort of compulsion to buy DVD, and I just think I had 20 years of culture to catch up on.
Mojo's new partner, Don, has been involved in the Green Party since it was founded.
Good one.
Of course, like all of the Green MPs, none of us are electorate MPs. We are list MPs, which means that we often have worked for a constituency that's across the country, and I think that's particularly the case for me, in that I'm trying to network and link up with the disability community right across New Zealand. So like I've been up to Whangarei, and I've been down to Dunedin, and I hope to go down to Invercargill. So in that sense, where I live is not so important as the effort that I go to be available to that community.
Today we have Mojo Mathers to meet us. You came to New Zealand, didn't you? From Nepal, Bhutan.
My name. I wasn't brought up with any sign language in my life. When I went to school for deaf, sign language wasn't allowed, and so you actually got a black mark if you were caught signing in or out of the classroom. So it never occurred to me that this was a language that I could use for communication.
Mojo's learnt that there's no funding for this New Zealand Sign Language class. The teacher is a volunteer.
Very nice.
They're just one of several deaf refugee groups across the country.
There just doesn't seem to be anything at all for the deaf people. Yeah. These people really need a properly funded program. I think we're one of the a few countries in the world who take people with disabilities as refugees.
Right.
And yet we don't think we have to provide for them when they get here.
Hi, Tor. How are you? Hi. How's it going? Good. Great. Hi. Hi, do you want to come and sit down with us? You're Mojo Mathers and I'm your buddy MP. Each of the Green MPs are buddied up with a number of electorates that we are meant to support and attend branch meetings whenever we can. I think it helps people motivated and to know that there's an MP there interested in how they're doing.
Being an MP means Mojo only gets to spend a couple of nights at home. When Parliament is sitting, she stays in Wellington. The rest of the time, she's travelling around the country. First thing every morning is the media call. Party members bid for which oral question will be asked in the House. A lot of this is done by telephone conference call, which presents difficulty for Mojo, who lip reads. To support her, a typist in another location listens in on the call and provides her with a transcript.
It imposes a bit more discipline on the call, like they have to identify say their name before they start speaking and try and not speak over each other. It took about a month before people were able to do that.
It wasn't certain if the electorate would accept a deaf MP.
I was advised not to say that I was deaf because the people around me thought that that would be a disadvantage in my list ranking. And so I didn't put that I was deaf, and I didn't really feel very good about that. And then by the time I stood again in 2008, I had a much higher profile within the Green Party, so most of them knew that I was deaf, but I was also on the National Campaign Committee and I was employed as the party strategic policy advisor. So people assumed what I was capable of, and because of that I think, they were more prepared to vote for me even knowing that I was deaf.
Representing a small party means long hours in the office. Mojo often doesn't leave till after 8 at night.
I have 7 portfolios. But previously, when we were smaller, the individual MP has to carry a lot more portfolios. So they consider this to be great, that we've now got 14 MPs, and it allows each of us to go into our portfolios in a bit more depth.
Mojo's paving the way for others with a disability. She's changing the way parliamentary procedures work.
I'm very conscious of the fact that there's a lot of public focus and attention on how I perform in the House. There's quite a lot of responsibility that comes with that in terms of the aspirations of disabled New Zealanders, because I meet with a lot of young New Zealanders with disabilities who are members of other political parties, and they've got political aspirations, but whether they can go anywhere with them will depend a lot and what happens with me. But it's made it possible for them, and it's made it possible for them to dream about it and to think about it, that they could be a member of Parliament one day. Will work and income pay up front for medical costs?
Asking a question in the House for the first time is nerve-wracking.
I used to have a phobia of public speaking. I literally felt like I was going to throw up and be sick. When I was a high school student, and I first stood up to give, a high school speech, the classroom just laughed at me because I couldn't pronounce the words properly. And I was so traumatised by that, I ran away and hid to medical care. So I never spoke in public, ever. I was terrified even of speaking in a meeting. And I felt this sort of sense of achievement that I'd overcome some of my fears in order to speak. And so I promised myself at that point, even though I had no idea what would lay in front of me, that if there was an opportunity to speak in public, I'd try and take it up. So that's a kind of stubbornness, if you like, not to let my own fears stop me from participating.
Do take your time, don't feel hurried by any of them.
I think there are so many barriers. I mean, the barriers within a political party about accepting someone with a disability, but most of all, you've got to be prepared to put yourself in the public eye and have the public scrutinise you and know that you can never really compete on the same way as an able-bodied person. So in my case, I'm never going to really speak as clearly as a lot of able-bodied people unless they really think about how I'm talking. I'm conscious that, you know, the public might go, oh, she's not speaking very clearly, well, I don't understand her, or let's not listen to her.
No order.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Given that over the last year we've seen an increase in unemployment and growth that was 8.5 billion less than the projected at the height of the economic crisis.
Mojo's entrance into Parliament was not without controversy.
The country's first deaf MP has used her maiden speech in Parliament to criticise the Speaker, Lockwood Smith. Green MP Mojo Mathers hit out at Mr Smith for not funding the electronic note takers she needs in the House.
Parliamentary Services paid for Mojo Mathers' maiden speech to be delivered in sign language, but that did little to ease tensions between our first deaf MP and the Speaker.
Mr Speaker, I made the point yesterday that funding for electronic note takers and equipment should not be coming out of my support budget, which all members receive, because no MP with a disability should be expected to fund their participation in the House in this way.
Lockwood Smith says Mojo Mathers should fund the note takers out of the taxpayer money she and every other MP gets to pay for 80 hours worth of support staff each week. Plenty of signs this stoush will drag on.
Deaf MP Mojo Mathers has won her battle for funding to allow her to follow proceedings in Parliament. The Green Party was last month embroiled in a row with the Speaker of the House, Lockwood Smith, over who would pay for an electronic note-taking service. Now Dr Smith says permanent funding has been approved by Parliamentary Services.
This was Mojo's first victory.
Won't have any more of this nonsense.
Now the note-taker supports her to follow the debate. Difficult when the House gets out of control and rowdy.
We inherited an absolute mess from the Labor Party. Does anyone remember what ACC was like when we came into office?
I don't pick up what is being said in that bickering, but I can see that there's bickering going on.
No wonder they got trounced last year.
Order. Now look, I must fail to hear these questions. The level of noise is totally unreasonable. Are members deaf today?
New Zealanders are paying all of us this incredible sum of money to sit there and essentially screech at each other. I don't think that's really what New Zealanders want. And it's a shame, really, because it doesn't reflect the cooperation that can happen outside of the debating chamber. It just seems like the debating chamber brings out the worst behaviour. I just think, oh no, what am I doing here? Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health. Did he seek any advice on the effect of raising prescription charges would have on New Zealanders with disabilities? If not, why not?
The Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr Speaker, no specific advice was sought on the impact on people with disabilities.
Parliament changed the procedure of question time. Now other MPs have to wait 15 seconds before they can respond. This allows Mojo the time to read the transcript of the response to her question, in case she wants to ask a supplementary question.
Mojo Mathers, supplementary question.
Supplementary question. Has he sought any advice on whether his policy of raising prescription charges will put vulnerable people off from seeking medical assistance?
The moderate increase in prescription charges means that no one need pay more than $40 a year in additional charges.
Parliament has never been so quiet.
I don't think it'll hold up over time. I think, you know, this is just because it's the first time, you know, the first question is so on. By the end of 3 years, I would expect that, you know, the atmosphere will have changed quite a bit and that there will be people wanting to push the boundaries back to a normal question time atmosphere. Will he reconsider this policy if it is shown to be a barrier to vulnerable people, such as people with disability.
This government is making support for disabled people a priority. This government has made $133 million of additional support services available to disabled New Zealanders, and that is a tremendous commitment.
When I first stood for the Green Party, I stood because I was passionate about environmental issues, and that's where my academic training and background and expertise and so on was. And so I was actually quite keen not to have anything with the disability portfolio. But then, over time, I think my attitude changed because I began to realise just how big the barriers were to political participation. I think and with that awareness and understanding became a realisation that it was necessary to try and break these barriers in order so that in the future, people who happened to have a disability but actually had considerable skills in other areas could participate in the political process. If that has to be me to break that barrier, so be it, because if I can't get into Parliament, how will anyone? Because I've had so much advantage in terms of education, support, and background in activism, so that what more do you need in the way of skills? And the only barrier is the barrier from outside of saying that deaf people can't participate in political processes. And so it's time for that barrier to go. One day we'll look back and just say, how come we were so exclusive of 1/5 of the population from being represented in Parliament? I think it's taken me a long time to get to where I am now. It has been a huge struggle at times. Inside, I thought I kept thinking I wasn't good enough. I'm quite candid about who I am and where I'm coming from. One of the things that helps me in life is when I hear about the struggles that other people have. Other people go through the same things that I do. So if I can be open about what I go through, and if that helps someone else, then that's great. I suppose I'm just like any other mum and woman. I love this country. I love this place. I love my kids, my family. And I want to do what I can to make it a better place for everyone.